This is a video about a new expense feature in Planner, and the best way to explain it is to show you how we've treated expenses up until now in Planner. This is an expense modal that you may be familiar with, and you can see it's a room rental in August and it's a planned expense for $1,200. Now let's say I've gone and stayed in this hotel and rented my room, so in reality it wasn't $1,200, it was $1,100, and it's now a closed expense. This is kind of useful because it shows what the actual expense was and it shows that it's been paid, but we've lost the history of what I originally thought the expense would be. And we had a lot of customers come to us and say it would be very useful if we knew what we'd originally planned to spend, so that when we come to the next planning cycle we might be able to plan more accurately. And that's what we have implemented. This is the new expenses tab, and I've got a very simple list of expenses here to highlight how this all works. So in the new expenses tab, we treat expenses in these kind of spreadsheet style rows, and we have a panel here of extra information. I've got this flight that's highlighted. I can see it's a travel expense. I can see that it's planned for January and it's $1,000. Now, in the new expenses experience, the planned expense goes into the planned amount column. Then when I actually have paid my bill, and let's say this time it was $1,100, I change the expense to closed, and Planner shows me that you originally planned to spend $1,000 here in the planned amount. The current amount is $1,100, and I know that that's the final amount because the status is closed. And Planner shows me the difference, which shows me that I'm $100 over what I planned. So the next time I come into a planning cycle, maybe I should plan for a little bit more money for my travel. That's all well and good for a one-time expense. But what happens when we have a recurring expense? So I have an example here. I'll click on this. And this is a recurring expense. And as you can see over here in the detail panel, I've got all these $1,000 per month planned expenses for my investments in Facebook. And as I go through the year, I'm going to adjust these one by one. So I could say, well, I really did spend $1,000 in January, and I actually ended up spending $1,500 in February. So slightly different behavior here. Again, Planner immediately shows me that I'm over budget. So just like here where I've got this little red flame and the red text that tells me I've overspent, I get that for the February time period. But I can also see that I've still got $9,500 of my money still to spend. But when I look at the status here, it says that the expense status is open. Open means that I have a recurring expense with lots of these expenses. Some of them might be closed, some might be planned, some might be committed, and it won't show as closed on this main panel here until every single one of these expenses is closed. Now, what happens if I have a planned expense and I just decide not to spend it at all? Well, in that case, I don't put anything into the current value and I change the status to closed. And what that does is says, okay, well, you planned to spend $1,000, you didn't spend anything, and it's now closed.